Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce, on the 17th of November 2022. Here's a walk through the front line. Just before I start, I'm a philosopher of religion, right? I'm also a political journalist for a reporter for Only Sky. A lot of my videos are on things like philosophy. If you don't like that stuff, don't watch those videos. I mean, some of you come onto the videos and say, well, this is a load of rubbish, don't like this. Fair enough. Just don't go on there. This is what I do. I'm not going to stop doing that because that is what I've been doing for 12 years. This is the new thing. Anyway, just thought I'd say that I am schizophrenic. I have these two different kind of things that I do. I would love to completely separate them with different channels. I can't do that at the moment. It's just not practical to do so. So anyway, I will just be producing content that is wildly different, and you can just pick your way through what you want to listen to. Here's a walk through the front line. It's been fairly quiet overnight. There have been, and there are, I think, presently, literally as I'm recording this, missile attacks and rocket attacks on places around Ukraine. So Dnipro is being hit, Vinnytsia is being hit, Zaporizhia. As we see here, at least 4 people dead after rockets hit the village of Vityanyansk in Zaporizhia. Residential building suffered a direct hit where 3 families lived, and rescuers are searching through the rubble for further victims. It looks pretty horrible. That's either a complete lack of precision or a lack of moral care for the Russians, as they are hitting places that don't look like military targets, but that's nothing unusual. Rockets and cruise missiles hitting Odessa as well. So things are happening there, but otherwise a fairly quiet night, really. Figures for yesterday, as far as the Ukrainians have released, 400 is a drop of about 300 or so from the previous few days. We'd seen a downtick in troops being lost by the Russians, but also mechanized equipment and other stuff. So tanks, APCs, 7 apiece, 6 drones, and 2 fuel tanks or random sort of other vehicles. This is a huge downtick compared to the last week or so, because we have witnessed a lot of vehicles being counted from the Kherson area, no doubt, and we probably come to the end of those being counted as Kherson is being combed through. You might get a few more, but that's probably why we've seen these figures head downwards. Okay, let's move on to the front line. Before I really talk about the Kupiansk, so I will start in my usual area of Kupiansk to Svatove-Kreminna. Kupiansk up here, Svatove-Kreminna. Very quiet northeast of Kupiansk, really. Not a lot of news coming from there. But down here, lots of news. In fact, there are claims that the Ukrainians are counterattacking in rather a lot of places, but then there are claims in those same places often that the Russians are counterattacking. And if both sides are counterattacking, they're either just attacking or I don't know exactly who's doing what there, because there seem to be claims from both sides. So I've just often tagged them as fighting. A lot of HIMARS activity as well. There's a Russian military blogger saying that the Ukrainians seem to be amassing sort of troops and tanks and everything ready for attacks from Popasna, which is to the east of Bakhmut, all the way up to sort of Svatove, and slightly north of Svatove. So if that's to be taken seriously, then the Ukrainians could be readying themselves for a huge push. We are starting to see troops from the Kherson front, that's Ukrainian troops, hit the front lines here, as well as Russian troops from the Kherson region as well in various places. To note, just before I hit the front lines precisely, is the activity of HIMARS. HIMARS seem to be in full swing at the moment. I've just arbitrarily tagged 5 places that they are hitting at the moment. This place, Mirna, is a tiny village just not too far from Luhansk city. Now, what's interesting about that is that it is really, if that's a place, and as ever with Ukraine, every place name has about 10 different place names. And I know I keep getting called out this, oh, it's the same in America, it's the same here. Like, honestly, like, it is quite incredible for me in Ukraine. It's just like everywhere I look, they are just the same place names. So this place might not be where the HIMARS is hitting, because it is right on the edge of the range, really 84 kilometers. Anything above that, you're probably risking accuracy and pushing the limits. But that seems to be the limits of the HIMARS there. You've got other places as well in this Luhansk Oblast. And then as we come up further north, oops, if we turn off that, I can actually move. We've got Starobilsk being here and a place just north of Starobilsk. Starobilsk is the logistical hub that I've said always should have been a major objective for the Ukrainians, because if they take that out, then you're hitting this railway line that goes south from Russia and through Kharkiv, through Luhansk Oblast. If you take that out at Starobilsk, then, or the railway out at Starobilsk, then the Russians have to come all the way down here and through the back door, and that's hugely inefficient compared to using this railway line there. It takes a lot longer to supply the Donbass. So the Starobilsk to me is a major target. Now, if you can take out that railway line and stations and whatnot with HIMARS, then you don't necessarily have to take Starobilsk. Why would you want Starobilsk? It's to stop this being a logistical hub. So actually just take out the logistics with HIMARS if you can. And they are certainly hitting Starobilsk. I think there were 6 HIMARS rockets there last night. There's also this place just to the north that has been hit with HIMARS as well. Bilohorivka. So let's have a look at that. So this is that place. Imagine waking up to this, or just sitting down to your dinner at night. So that's the Ukrainians hitting there. As I say, northwest, marginally northwest of Starobilsk. We have Starobilsk being hit with 6 HIMARS last night as well. Waiting for more info, but heavy explosions reported by locals. And so, HIMARS are working overtime every night. They must be the most overworked pieces of equipment in Ukraine. I imagine they are using them to their fullest capacity. As we come down, as we look at the Kupiansk to Svatove axis, as I say, it's quite quiet up at Vilshana and Persho-Travneve. You haven't heard anything from there for ages, but there are reconnaissance and force attacks all the way from sort of Pilshana and out of Stepne Pavlivka going along here. Kuzmivka is really hot at the moment. Lots of fighting on the outskirts of that, particularly on the western side, from the Ukrainians trying to push in. And we have fighting further south as well by Kolomichika. I don't know, I've butchered that obviously, but I try my best. So this is lots of activity, and Svatove has been on tenterhooks for a long time now because the fighting is close, but it is inching close. It's no quick thing to take on these places that are dug in. I just want to give you an idea of what some of these places might look like. So Makivka here, which is further down between sort of Kreminna and Svatove, but on the Kherson River here. This is a place that has been claimed to be Ukrainian, and Russians say, no, we're in Makivka, and then Ukrainians like, no, and then the Russians say, well, we're shelling Makivka, which means that Ukrainians there. Anyway, back and forth for the last few weeks. Well, this is what a place like that actually looks like, and I think sometimes it's worth getting a bit of visual context and idea of these places, because we just see them as towns on a map or villages on a map. And look at the massive craters, the destruction that is right the way through this settlement, like the roads, the farm buildings, the houses, the walls, the fences, the trees. There's just huge amounts. Look at the trees, just stripped of any life, and often just sort of bare trunks, just a single bare trunk as everything's been blown off it, all just knocked down. These buildings completely destroyed. So when I say Ukraine is controlling this settlement, what I'm saying is no one's living there because the houses are completely destroyed, and they kind of have some kind of territorial control over this, as you can see from these guys walking through the place. But it's just a piece of ruined land, a piece of ruined settlement. Maybe all right for the chickens, but for humans, it's a no-go area. So that's Makivka. And you can imagine there'll be many settlements like that up and down the front. So what does no reports say? No map changes. Ukrainians tried to storm Kuzumivka, but had to retreat under heavy artillery fire. So that's where I say they're on the western side of that. The Ukrainians attacked Svatove-Starobilsk and Bilohorivka with artillery and HIMARS. So artillery would have been on Svatova, HIMARS would have been on these two. A column of heavy equipment was that video that I showed you. Must have been that column of heavy equipment reportedly hit. As we come further down, Ploshchanka is difficult, as according to the Russians still. Some sources even tell us that the Ukrainians have penetrated deep around the P66 highway as far as Krasny-Rachensky. So that was where they have made an initial penetration right back at the back end of the big counter attack to the east, and they're still showing presence just west of Svatove-Pavlivka. Apparently there are sabotage units operating around there. So this is Ploshchanka. This is just sort of to the west of Makivka that I was just talking about. Activity around this P66 highway and Svatove-Pavlivka, but just to the west of Ploshchanka, sorry, to the east of Ploshchanka is Krasny-Rachensky, which I don't know if you remember, some weeks back, the Ukrainians had got a foothold there, and even slightly to the east of this Krasna River. So they had that was a furthest their breach, and then they've obviously had to pull back under pressure from the Russians. But that was when they breached this P66 highway. This will be under some kind of fire control, and Ploshchanka is difficult. The Ukrainians are there, but they are getting shelled by the Russians, but they're giving Russians some issue. Sabotage and reconnaissance activity in and around the area. And then as we come down to the Kremna area, there's a lot of activity to the south of there. Bilohorivka is see, I've just adapted my maps to be a little bit more accurate, but there is activity around Bilohorivka. Now, someone rightly pointed out, Thierry, who is so good on the comments on the threads below my videos, I was saying that, you know, Bilohorivka is your access into this forest and can start giving you hassle up towards Kremna, and he's like, actually, really probably not, because if you look at the Svatove River, it is not easy to cross, and it's quite swampy around here, and you've got forests, and it's pretty difficult. And actually, if you look at the river, there are huge amounts of oxbow lakes. If you remember your sort of in Britain GCSE geography, don't know what it's like elsewhere wherever you live, but we learn about how rivers are made, and there's heaps of oxbow lakes there, and sort of things to negotiate. This is quite a difficult area to get across. So actually, no, if you did capture Bilohorivka, it's not going to give you great access to the forest. But as I said earlier, Dubrova is an important place there, and that's why that seems to be fairly under pressure at the moment. But the idea is that the Russians are under quite a bit of counterattack pressure in these places. Now, I did my own this is my second bit of geolocation yesterday. There's this Ukrainian soldiers have destroyed a Russian armored vehicle or vehicles near Lysychansk refinery with the help of ATGM. So they've got maximum sort of 5 kilometer maybe range, but usually less than that. Here you see these white buildings there, these white sort of oil refinery units, and then this vehicle, they're being hit from this side. Okay, which is interesting. So I then geolocated this to, so there's Lysychansk, to this place just here, and we have those 6 white or double white things with the black ones there. Let's just show you that again. There they are with the sort of black one in the middle, and we're looking further out from there. So this is, I've sort of geolocated that to there or somewhere around here, and the missile came from over there, or the rocket came from over there. What this says is that Ukrainians are indeed operating over here, and they're hitting vehicles behind this Russian line here, and you might be seeing a counterattack towards Lysychansk. Obviously, it would be unwise for the Ukrainians to hit Lysychansk directly. You would want to be encircling these larger towns. But there you go. Stuff happening around there. And then we come down to Bakhmut. Bakhmut is actually fairly quiet again. There is activity to the north of Bakhmut in the Solidar area in Bakhmutsky. but really a little bit on the east, but not heard anything from Opitny or Ivanohrad over the last day. There is fighting and possibly counterattack from the Ukrainians here around Kurdyumivka, which is interesting. So whether the Ukrainians are thinking, if we don't start pressuring the Russians, we are inviting them onto us, and it becomes just this grind. So I don't know whether that is what they're doing, or whether this is actually a concerted effort to push eastwards. Who knows? Then, as we come further down south, past Maiorsk. So Maiorsk is this place where the Russians claim to have taken, and the Ukrainians did a counterclaim saying, no, we're still there, or at least we are giving you hell, because there was this claim that an entire battalion had been disbanded because 50% of them had died. But anyway, there's stuff happening around Maiorsk still. And we come down to north of Avdivka. There are reinforcements from the Ukrainians starting to hit Avdivka. I think Kherson reinforcements, and you are starting to get, I think, more artillery here. Just north of there, the Russians. I've adapted my map. Actually, I hadn't changed it for a few days, and it looks like I was saying that they would get hassling the Ukrainians to the north in their attempted encirclement of Avdivka, and that certainly seems to be the case. There's Novokalinove is a scene of quite intense fighting between the two sides. So I have changed my map there. But they don't want to lose Avdivka, and there is some claims from the Russians that they are fighting on the outskirts here. Ukrainians obviously don't want that, so they are piling in some, or at least putting in some reinforcements from what we can gather. I will show you in my extra video. So I told you about a 2-unit attack of 2 tank units with troops attacking in Pervomaisky forward. I think last week it was. There's now a 9-minute video that's come out about that, which is just fascinating to watch. I won't show you it all, but I will give you a glimpse of that later to give you an idea of what Pervomaisky looks like, and the apocalyptic battle scenes coming out of there. So there you go. As we move further on, let me pause for a second. So I just had to check some of my sources because I was starting to forget what I'm talking about because my brain is struggling. Anyway, just to confirm, there are marginal gains from the Russians around here, but marginal gains means sort of meters, tens of meters, whatever, around Pervomaisky, Vodyanya, and Opitny. But they will be being battered by Ukrainian artillery as well around there. So every meter for the Russians is so costly in terms of personnel. Just, yeah, it makes you wonder why. Fighting around here, so further down south between Krasnochorivka and Stepne Pavlivka, this is like a counterattack and counterattack. So both of them are counterattacking. They're both just attacking each other. And I say that with a smile on my face. It's obviously terrible. There are human losses there, and it's all rather senseless. And possibly a Ukrainian counterattack around Marinka as well, or at least coming out of Maximilianivka, which is interesting because if there's fighting in Marinka, what does a counterattack from there look like? Yeah, so you hear these things. That's why I put a question mark there, so I don't quite understand what a counterattack from the Ukrainians there would be. Maybe it's just sort of reinforcing and a push on Marinka. Maybe it's north of there. I don't know exactly. And then we get down to Vuhledar and Pavlivka. Just before we get there, there has been a counterattack. I think, well, the Russians say it's repelled by their artillery, but a Ukrainian counterattack towards Stepne. And this might be because they understand that if the attack comes from the east towards these towns and Vodyanya, then that is Vuhledar being really susceptible. And I want to show you just a topographical map to explain a little bit about what's going on here. So here is the topographical map of Ukraine. These are in Cyrillic writing, so it's quite difficult to know where you are in this map. But that place there, that name there is Vuhledar, right? So just down here is Pavlivka. So as you can see, Pavlivka is on this kind of river bed, very low down there, and or at least somewhat lower, 30 meters lower than um, Vuhledar. But that, as you can see down here, this kind of high ground reaches across to the east, which means if you're going to attack Vuhledar, you want to attack from the east going westwards, and you want to be sort of advancing in here. So this is how somewhere like this, and you see there's a little bit of elevation there. This little town is hugely important for protecting Vuhledar from attacks from the east. So let's take that back to my map here. So Vodyane is really super important for the defense of Vuhledar. In other words, like if you are the Russians and you want to take out Vuhledar, then really you want to be hitting Vodyane. So you want to be coming along here, and I think actually that's what they've been trying to do. That by taking Vodyane, then you can come down and take Vuhledar. Doing the Pavlivka up to Vuhledar is pointless, and this is my opinion would be the stupidity of Russia, is that they have been hammering away at this at the cost of a massive amount of mechanized equipment and troops. And they're never going to take Vuhledar because it has the elevation. Plus, you've got, Ukrainian artillery, actually much further back than that, actually hammering all around here. So you want to be doing a couple of things, which is not attacking from Pavlivka. You want to be attacking from the east, and also even further east to here. So if you can get these towns up there, then you can sort of march down this road and Vuhledar goes. And then after you get that, so someone was saying yesterday, it can take you 30 days to take one town, and then once you've got that one town, it can take you 1 day to take 30 towns. Which is to say that sometimes these places are key. So if you batter your heads against a brick wall to take this one place, well, if you're a bit clever about it, yeah, it can take a long time, but you can get that, and then it's the key to all these other places with flat land behind it, possibly, or at least easier, easier terrain to negotiate. So there you go. You can start opening up places behind that by getting this one town Vuhledar. It's a really tough nut for the Russians to crack. So that's my thoughts about Pavlivka. Ridiculously nonsensical place to try and continue to get. You could have taken all those troops and just put them here and try to go westwards along here instead, and saved all those men, or even just along here to Vodyane and down. But the Russians seem to have been really impatient in trying to get that, and it becomes a PR thing. Once Pavlivka has become this iconic place, you have to take it, because if you don't take it, it's such a a PR loss. HIMARS hitting as well around Volnovakha. So again, HIMARS are active all over the shop. And there are sort of moments of fighting around here, but not nearly as much as elsewhere. And then we move to the Kherson area. So here's just an indication of how much activity is going on around the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia oblasts. Ukrainian this is the Institute Study of War, continued targeting Russian forces and logistics nodes in the rear areas of Zaporizhzhia Oblast and Kherson Oblast. The Ukrainian General Staff reported on November 16th that Ukrainian forces struck Russian positions near Skadovsk, which I told you about, Novomykolaiivka and Novomayachka. On November the 15th, Ukraine's Operational Command South stated that Ukrainian forces conducted over 50 artillery strikes against Russian positions on the left bank of the Dnipro River, destroying 2 Russian ammunition depots in Novokakhovka and Oleshki, injuring 17 personnel and damaging 15 armoured vehicles. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed on November the 16th that Russian forces intercepted HIMARS rounds near Kalanchak, which they might have done, but they often say that, and actually they haven't. And Novomykolaiivka, a Russian source claimed that residents reported explosions in Kalanchak and Chaplinka, and so on and so forth. But this is pretty important as far as I'm concerned. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Ukrainian strikes rendered a rail bridge unusable in Chernihivka in Zaporizhia Oblast. So that is what they want to be hitting, which are logistical nodes and routes into Crimea. With the Kerch down, Crimea is in trouble. Now, that ISW report also says that Russia are building secondary defensive fortifications along a canal. I think around here, Armyansk. I may be wrong there, and the Russians are obviously in defensive mode there. Now, there has been a HIMARS attack last night on Jankoy, which is here. This is where there's a military airport, and that has been the scene of an attack. So there it is. Yep. Not looking good for the Russians there if they are getting hit all the way down in Jankoy. Now, again, let's have a look at the distances. That is 144 kilometers from anywhere, from the nearest place. So quite what that's been hit with, I don't know, but it's been hit. Maybe someone can enlighten me as what they think has been able to strike that far into Crimea. Then you start thinking, oh, ATACMS, or is it something released from a jet that's been flying maybe closer over to here, but then surface to air missiles, that'd be pretty dangerous. I don't know, but certainly an interesting move from the Ukrainians there. Actually, just a little bit more information about Jankoy. Here it is. Place has an airbase. Area is full of military camps. Also, what's interesting is this: Jankoy is the rail hub, bit of a crossroads there for these different rail networks. So that could be a very useful place to hit. So the other thing to say, just finally, is that someone was noting, because I talked yesterday about the Russians moving 10 to 15 kilometers back from here. That could be partly to do with the fact that this is lower on this side of the river than on the right bank of the river. So the left bank, you left and right as the river flows. So as the river flows down here, this is the left bank, will be lower, much more silty, bit of a floodplain. So when you're digging trenches and revetments and fortifications, you're going to be getting water when you dig down, pretty sandy as well, and whatnot, or marshy and boggy. So moving 10 to 15 kilometers back actually makes a lot of sense just from a practical point of view. But these places are being hit by Ukrainian artillery. So I just think the Russians are going to have quite a hard time around here, as the Ukrainians should be able to use their range advantage with the artillery that they have. The final thing I'm going to say, I haven't mentioned anything to do with the Spit because I've heard nothing else about the Spit Peninsula. I guess special forces are operating around there. Who knows? We all got a bit excited. I got excited about that on the first day that it was that there was video footage coming out there, but just not a lot else out there now. The final thing I want to say, which is to go back actually to Pavlivka and just show you a couple of bits from there, so you can tune out now if you want. So I just got a few bits of video to support what I was saying, but also want to mention Pavlivka. So fighting occurs around Pavlivka. Russians and Ukrainian both control half the town, says Nell reports. AFU pounds the city with artillery. AFU got reinforced in the area with 2 brigades from Kherson, and we saw an AFU BMP pinning down Russian forces in southern Pavlivka. Actually, I'm going to contest whether that is where that was. But also the reports, and there's a video I'm just going to mention, also reports that the Russian forces are shelling Vuhledar heavily and also using large amounts of loitering munitions, and I think air attacks as well. If I was Russia, I wouldn't be using my ground troops to attack from Pavlivka to Vuhledar, but I would be absolutely hammering Vuhledar with everything I had, artillery-wise, helicopter airstrikes, fixed wing airstrikes, and loitering munitions. You just need to absolutely demolish these areas. But then, of course, the difficulty is, even if you do demolish these buildings, you can still hide people, arguably even more easily in these places. So it still becomes really difficult. But however, I just wouldn't be using all my human resources to try and get up there and take Vuhledar. I'd just be doing that from a distance with indirect fire, and yeah, and not using Pavlivka at all. Anyway, there's this claim that there's this video that's been going around, which is quite fascinating to see. It's this video, which is a BMP. Now, you're thinking, what are they firing at? They've probably got thermal imaging on there, so they are seeing things down there that they're firing at. Which goes on and on and on, just firing and firing. But then I think they overdid it. That is smoking. That's smoking, and there's a little bit of fire coming out of there as well. So he may have overheated the barrel. So the claim from NOL reports is that's southern Pavlivka, and that's firing at something, whether it's suppressing fire or not, I don't know. But actually, I've seen someone geolocate that, and whether it's a definite geolocation, I don't know. In fact, it might even be on that thread. So yeah, geolocation. There's a few people trying to geolocate this, and this is where it's been geolocated to. So if you think just by that 9.6, oops, oh, goodness me, that's not what I wanted to do. So we'll just go back and click on that again. Apologies. So now we have Vuhledar here. So if this is where it's been geolocated to, then actually that isn't southern Pavlivka at all, and that's just firing down on the outskirts of Pavlivka, which could then support the idea that the Russians control Pavlivka, because why would they be firing down there if the Ukrainians control 50% of Pavlivka? But that depends on whether that's an accurate geolocation of that vehicle, and they're just having to use the idea of these pylons, and because everything else is pretty flat, it's a straight road next to some pylons. So it depends, what you believe there. Anyway, just thought I'd add that in, as a nice bit of interest there for you. Anyway, I hope that's of use. Thank you for bearing with me. It's been a long one. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you want to support the channel by buy me a coffee or PayPal or YouTube, thanks. It's really super appreciated. It is what actually sustains me doing this. Otherwise, I literally wouldn't do this. Or you can pop along to uasupporter.com/ATP, and you can get yourself something to show your support for Ukraine, like a beanie hat, and I get a little bit of commission that helps out my channel. So all sorts of stuff you can grab there. Please check it out. And in the meantime, tool pips, and I'll see you later.